We're going to start momentarily. We're just waiting for one more senator, so we have quorums. Hey, Delegate Moon, you're going to be up first. Is that all right? We're going to start here in a second. Oh, district bias. Should be right here. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and gavel in. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. We have 15 bills on the docket. We're going to start off with Delegate Moon with House Bill 849. We'll then move to a joint bill with his Montgomery County delegation and the Prince George's delegation, 819. We'll then move to 219, 391, 416, 435, 519, 747, 761, 820, 999, 1002, 1194, 1207, and we'll end up with Delegate Stein with House Bill 1173. That's subject to change as people move in and out because everyone's going across the street for bill hearings. So with that, Delegate Moon, you're up. House Bill 849. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you. This is my first day up in Judicial Proceedings Committee, so thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill before you, it started as a local bill from Montgomery County. It has the unanimous support of the Montgomery House and Senate delegation, but it got turned into a statewide bill because it proposes to change the wording and form of a certain type of photo enforcement citation. And because those are district court documents, they have to be done in a statewide manner. And so the reforms proposed by this bill would now apply to Montgomery County and any other county that operates these photo enforcement of school bus violations. So it might be a little unusual for folks here to think that the Montgomery County delegation, which I think you're accustomed to probably as the most friendly to photo enforcement technologies, and also perhaps one of the most interested in Vision Zero and pedestrian policies, why we would be unanimously supporting a bill to take a $250 fine and reduce it to a warning on the first offense in some instances. And so I have to tell you, the people that are going to come behind me are going to count on being able to how will anyone think of the children as the winning argument here, but we deferred to that for 4 years. And, included in the uploaded testimony, you see the votes this committee took and the bill that had promises encased in it from the people coming up behind me that were ignored when we checked in on them 1 year later. They refused to give us data about where these photo enforcement tickets were happening, what the nature of the violations were, until we passed a law forcing them to do it. So what is the $250 ticket all about? It sounds like a good idea for drivers to stop for school buses. And in fact, I was here, many of you were here on the floor when we passed the bill authorizing the Montgomery County pilot, later expanding that pilot to be on every school bus, and then later changing the fine amount from 100 something to $250 now, first offense. And we all voted for this because the offenses weren't going down. And we thought what we were voting for was people refusing to stop for a school bus who are driving behind the bus, because that's a pretty lousy thing to do. But instead, the bulk of the violations, over 70% of them, are from a very different scenario. They are from the scenario of the opposite lane drivers. In the way we wrote this law, and I think we didn't get it right, we said if there's a median on the road, a car coming in the opposite direction does not have to stop for a school bus, no ticket. But if there's no median on that road, that car coming in that opposite direction does have to stop. Now, we have allowed these counties to do this enforcement and collect revenues on state highways. In Montgomery County, some of them are 8 lanes or beyond. And so when you have a school bus stopped on an undivided 8-lane state highway and cars coming along 8 lanes away, maybe in rush hour, it presents an inherently confusing situation. What the people behind me will tell you is that once given this $250 ticket, the recidivism rate is low. That is true. People don't do it again once they get hit with one of these. But because these are high volume highways, if you look at the list of locations, these are all the corridors, commuter corridors, heavy corridors into Washington, D.C. Each of these violators is replaced with a new one, more in fact, which calls into question the very location of these bus stops on these undivided 8-lane highways. Why are these county school systems putting these bus stops there? If this is so dangerous as to warrant a $250 ticket, maybe they should move the stops. Montgomery County promised to look at this in 2019. They didn't do it when we checked back with them later. It was again promised in a law that we all voted for unanimously last year. I checked back in. This time, they said they didn't think it was dangerous. They're not moving the stops. It makes the bus routes a little less efficient. That is their choice. So I have handouts for you because I think it's important for you to see exactly what I am talking about and what these locations that are issuing $250 tickets are all about. We have stops in Montgomery County issuing $1 million nearly in fines every year, single bus stops. What I also have for you is a report produced just last year from DLS, our auditors, talking about the procurement issues with the way Montgomery County, and again, we were the guinea pig jurisdiction for this procurement problems. So this vendor has been going around to every county promising that everyone was going to get this equipment for free, cameras in and outside of the buses, and you got a 60-40 revenue split for the revenues after the vendor recouped its costs. This audit report from our auditors talks about Montgomery County has already paid, I think, $18 million for the equipment, overpaid, which they didn't know because of the vague contract terms, and so got a refund from the vendor. Okay, so we're just now at the point in I guess the vendor contract where we're splitting 60-40 what comes from this. So of course they are all very interested in that 60%. And I'm sorry to say, it's time for that to end. So I'm happy to expand in detail on any of this, but like I said, the county's already paid for this. All of these counties have the option to move the bus stops, and they've done nothing of the other things that were promised. Education campaigns to warn drivers, Spanish language citations, because CASA's headquarters and other non-English speaking areas are among the highest citations, and state highway always has the option of redirecting the millions generated by this program to build medians so that, as happens in the wealthier neighborhoods, there's no tickets issued whatsoever because the road is engineered to be safe. That was what the last 2 iterations of this bill attempted to do. The folks behind me fought tooth and nail to stop reprogramming of this money, this fine revenue that's being collected on state highways from being used for safety improvement on state highways. So I'm sorry, this is the last best offer as we head into year 5 of this discussion. It's time for these games to end. Happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Delegate Moon. We have a couple questions from the committee members. We'll start off with Senator Sidnor.
No, a comment. It seems to me as if local governments are misusing a number of these state laws that were given them to use cameras. I had a bill in E&T. I think the same folk who are opposing you have been opposing me. And from what I can tell, you have no one except for you, Stan. I mean, you don't have too many favorables, do you?
I've got 110 favorables from members of the House of Delegates who have heard We've all heard from constituents who received these $250 tickets and are surprised and will say, I consider myself a good, safe driver. I was unaware that this was the case. I think we made it a strict liability offense with these photo enforcement, right? When you cross a red light or when you're speeding, the strict liability makes a lot more sense in terms of the moral culpability of the driver at that time.
And
When
then,
you have a scenario where it depends on whether the state has paid to divide the highway or not, your behavior is either a $250 ticket or not. The moral culpability is much more muddled in that scenario.
and what's the revenue generated by these cameras?
Well, now that Montgomery County has paid the vendor, it's whatever, $18 million for it. It's now splitting 60-40, the $250 for each ticket that's generated. And again, if you look at the top, all we did in past years was ask him to look at the top 10, because the top 10 were the same. And we said, my God, we have bus stops in my district, 3 bus stops in the top 10, single bus stops that are generating between $250,000 and $1 million in fine revenue. And I said, can we please use any of that money to make this the world's safest bus stop if we're going to have this policy? Here we are. Like I said, 5 years later, nothing's changed.
We didn't give any direction as to how these cameras were to be set up. We just kind of let the locals.
We
figure it
let the counties do enforcement on state highways, collect all the revenue, and turn none of it back for safety improvements on state highways.
I'll be supporting this bill.
Thank you.
We passed your bill though, didn't we? Yeah, excellent. Uh-oh, all right. All right. No, we all voted for Sidnor's bill. It's okay. All right, Senator Folden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Delegate, for bringing the bill forward. I'm just curious about any of the well, I won't get into the irony. I'll just say that I find it interesting that we have this discussion that you're wanting to basically repeal this. And I would have been the one who never even wanted to start it. And now there was a lot of championing going on opposite sides of this. Especially when they went to raise the fee and.
Yeah, I think we were both there when these original floor debates on this were happening.
And I believe I was like, unless there's data to support the need.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. And everybody was like, no, you're an idiot.
They wouldn't
We're
give
gonna
us,
vote it
they wouldn't
anyways.
give us the data. They refused to give us the data
Well, and
for
that's
4
what we're
years.
Okay, so my question now is where's what data has been given? Because these are the ones that are on the bus, correct?
So we now have the data. I asked them for a number of things. And they finally gave it to us last year. This thing they promised 4 years ago, refused to do. They finally gave it to us last year, and it verified exactly what I thought it was going to say. Less than 30% of the violations are people refusing to stop behind a school bus.
Mhm.
Over 70% are people in that opposite lane scenario. And you say, okay, fine. Well, then maybe if that's the case, we just let them get the ticket. And since the recidivism rate is low on those, that solves the problem. But it doesn't, because as I've noted, these are corridors into Washington, DC. So every one of these suckers is replaced by another one driving through on these heavy volume corridors. And that's borne out in the data, where the year over year offense data at these places where we have relied on the $250 ticket to be our sole safety mechanism is not working. So again, I asked my school system, if this is so dangerous and the tickets are not reducing the offenses, why are these bus stops on this road? I turn to state highway and I say, if these offense data is showing this as one of the most dangerous school bus stops in the county by what we have defined as a dangerous bus stop, warranting a $250 ticket, why is state highway not doing anything to re-engineer that segment of road? I've been asking these questions for 4 years. It's crazy. I know, maybe I'm talking your
I
language.
gotta tell you, you're making me I'm getting all misty eyed just listening to you. I don't know what's happening. I don't know.
I'm in my third term.
Oh, there we go. Because I never heard anything like this the first time. So, but these are the cameras that are attached to the buses, right? The school buses.
Correct.
So they're not about, so I hear what you're saying. But is there any data within the group of data that you've collected that shows that any of these locations? So when I first started this, I wanted to know the data is supported, children struck, buses impacted, things of that nature. Now I'm asking for that again. Since this data has been given to you at these bus stops, how many children in Montgomery County have been struck disembarking a bus that has one of these devices on it?
That's a good question. I don't know. I can try and get that for you.
So, and the reason I ask is because obviously Montgomery County, you guys love your cameras.
That's why I said it's an unusual day
Got me
when a
to see
majority of
earlier
the
this
county,
past
or
year.
no, not majority, unanimous support from the county delegation.
So I would be curious. Look, I'm a safety proponent. You guys wanted these bills. You guys wanted this stuff, and you guys voted it through with 110 of your friends. Voted it through and made it law. And now all of a sudden we're like, I don't like this. And
It was not all of a sudden. I'll tell you that.
over the
You've been
past
on a
couple of years.
5-year journey over here.
5
All right,
years.
so
And I
you
didn't
had
want
a
to put my
journey.
name on it because of what I thought these folks would say. It's been a delegation year for years. I finally said, you know what? I'm armed with the data. My name's going on it.
I'm proud of
comfortable
your
with it.
journey, Delegate Moon. I'm proud of your journey. If I could get that data, because for me, being in public safety, the data is important to supplement what you're saying. And I understand what you're saying, but, and I know a lot of people can claim ignorance to the law, but unless there is some type of barrier on either side of the roadway, it doesn't matter. If there's not an elevated barrier delineating a median, you got to stop on both sides. That's what you're learning from this. And this is what people are, unfortunately, as you're saying, learning on these wider stretches, these wider laned roads. So I understand that. I understand that concern. The bigger concern for me is quite honestly, if there's kids that aren't being hit because they put these on the buses, I think it's a hard thing to really try to.
It won't, I'll tell you what, no matter
Reverse.
what, the number won't be correlated with the number of citations generated. I can guarantee that. But here's the factoid I will give you, the disturbing one.
Yeah.
So in the years that we were asking for this data and they refused to give it, the number one location this past year is actually not in my district. It's in Senator Kelly's district. And it's been the same. It's been in the top for some time now on River Road. That location where we had asked if they just followed the data as we had suggested as an indicator of a dangerous place where an engineering treatment is warranted. No one listened to us. That's been in the bill for some time now. And now it forces State Highway to come up with a plan to address these intersections. That's the place where a Ukrainian, a US State Department official was brought back from Ukraine because of the war that was about to break out, came home to Bethesda and was killed on a bike ride at that very location where the prior bill had asked for engineering treatment. And so again, all they want to do is collect the money. None of it is going to do the safety. So this is just absurd. And if it's really a problem for those kids, move the bus stops.
Listen, Delegate, I couldn't agree with you more. I hear what you're saying. It's like, I think we're speaking the same language here. On the safety.
Sorry, I'm
point-
talking to them.
Listen, I have brought stuff for, I argued these same points
Senator,
7 years ago.
Stop.
Thank you.
Senator just wanted to gloat a little bit.
That's right.
That's fine.
I don't get to glow
Stomp
very
on my
often.
grave.
I don't get to glow very often when you and 110 of your friends kind of vote on stuff and I don't get to say.
Fair enough,
So,
fair enough.
thank you.
Oh, we got. This is like an episode of Parks and Rec, man. Okay. All right. Senator Kelly and then Senator Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have much to add after that long conversation, but I do want to thank you for the bill and acknowledge that I think I was on the House side when we discussed this originally, and it is something that we have heard a lot from our constituents. And also, in addition to the examples that you gave, I believe you and I discussed, there's one road where there is a median, but there's maybe a 15-foot gap in the median to allow for turning, and that's where the bus stop is located. So people don't even know that that's happening. And everybody every day just gets tickets there. So I agree that this is largely revenue generation and not related to public safety. Wouldn't you think that was the opinion of the Montgomery County delegation, sir?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey,
Hi, are they gonna get
initially
to
you
this?
came,
Hello?
initially you said the bill came in as a local bill,
Yes.
but now it's a statewide bill.
Correct.
So it's statewide now.
So this reform about so the bill says in the opposite lane scenario, 4 lanes, you get a warning on your first offense. That would reflect on all of the counties that are operating this school bus enforcement program.
Got it. Was that study only for Montgomery County or was
The
it for-
offense data came from Montgomery County, correct?
Oh, so we don't have the data for the other counties.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. And did that bill only cover Montgomery County to require because in Prince George County, we have.
The data bill was a local bill last
Local
year,
bill.
correct? Yeah.
Got it, okay, cool. And the issue you brought up is that the money that comes from this doesn't go to safety for those areas where the kids get dropped off at
County general fund.
county general funds. So, but does your bill, does your bill help with that?
We tried to reprogram this money year after year, and that is not in this bill.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions, thank you, Delegate Moon. And with that, that will conclude the testimony for the proponents of the bill. We'll now switch to the opposition panel. No, we're on 849. All right, so we're now going to hear from Ms. Zetik. Is Sarah Sample here? And Daniel Rodriguez. And then we have one virtual participant, which will pipe in after you all finish. So whoever would like to start. Further questions, thank you, Delegate Moon. And with that, if you could come up to the podium to testify. And if you are participating virtually, if you could either mute or close out the tab that you are streaming the YouTube channel on, that'd be great. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Barbara Zektik here on behalf of Bus Patrol. Bus Patrol's Vice President, Steve Randazzo, is on virtually and will be talking specifically. I would like to take my 2 minutes to show a video. I'm going to give Sandy this flash drive. And if you'd like, I can turn it over to somebody else while we do this technical. Okay. You can't because I gotta. Oh, okay. Yeah. So this video and, with what time remaining that we can show you, will show you examples of places throughout the state of Maryland where we have multiple lane highways with cars passing school buses on the opposite side. I don't believe that Delegate Moon nor Bus Patrol disagree that this is a problem. I do want to make sure this committee is keenly aware. It is an extreme problem that we have in this state, not just in Montgomery County, but throughout the state, to have drivers passing by school buses while they're stopped, while children are actually crossing the road to get to the bus stop on the other side. And it is a long-standing tenet of traffic safety. You need education as well as enforcement. There we go. And I do want to emphasize, the bus patrol team and I have spent many hours looking at much worse videos. Some of your staff have seen some of those videos. These are the kind videos. We're not here to be sensationalistic or say save the children. We're here to show this is a real problem and this is not an academic exercise. Yeah, and these are the kind of videos we're showing you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We'll now hear, well, whoever would like to come up next, here's a sample.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the chair for having me. Thank you to members of the committee. My name is Sarah Sample from Maryland Association of Counties. And just before I start, I want to point out, I am one of the folks behind, but a lot of the sponsor information that was given is very heavily Montgomery County. And as a representative of the Maryland Association of Counties, I am testifying on behalf of how this would affect all of the counties. And so this, like you've heard, is a requirement to send a warning instead of a citation for a first-time violation of the type of infraction that you've just seen there. I think I want to just dispel completely that this is not a dangerous situation. I think the video showed that, but I also think the penalty at $250 for a camera, $500 for an officer who catches an individual doing this, and 3 points on a license. I think that spells out what the state thinks about this type of infraction. So I think as far as characterizing this as not dangerous, we would just refute that. The warnings have a multiplying effect because they can't change the behavior immediately. We've also seen that even low fines don't change the behavior. And so we're very concerned that that multiplying effect will leave the window open for this type of violation that you've seen to just continue happening. And that's scary. And I think that also takes us backwards in terms of the progress that the citations have had in terms of education, and would take us backwards in the counties that are just now starting to get some of these programs up and running. Because again, you've heard mainly a lot of feedback from, I think, a very frustrating situation in Montgomery County specifically. But again, this bill would affect all jurisdictions that would be looking to do this, which I think is somewhere in the range of 7 to 8 at this point. And others are looking to add it because ultimately we need these situations to be safe at these bus stops. Yeah, so I think I would just finish by saying, I think that this bill was born out of frustration in Montgomery County, and this is a bill that's affecting all of the counties. We want to make sure that we can keep these situations safe and that we're not going backwards with the legislation. We would urge an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to allow me to speak on this legislation. The Anne Arundel County Police Department stands in opposition to House Bill 849 as it is written. The current law, Transportation Article 21706.1, currently allows a jurisdiction to issue a civil citation or a warning. I would like to be 100% clear. Our firm opposition to this law is in order to maintain the safety of our children. For all of us here who have raised or taught children, we are very much aware that they often lack judgment in certain situations such as crossing roadways, and they take years for their brains to develop. They don't know the differences and dangers of a 4-lane highway without a median. One child lost to a motorist who fails to obey the law and strikes a child is absolutely unacceptable. Since the inception of the automated bus camera program, we have seen several video examples here in Anne Arundel County of children nearly being struck in the exact situation that this law is trying to mandate again a first-time warning for. The law related to stopping for a school bus is clearly defined in the Maryland Transportation Article. It is explained in the MVA handbook, which is used to study for driver's testing, and it is also taught in the driver's education curriculum of Maryland. So let's be clear again, this is a serious traffic violation. If this violation is witnessed as an on-view offense by a police officer, the penalty is up to $570 and 3 points. In conclusion, there are many other issues that have been brought up that are associated with this legislation that do indeed warrant additional discussion, such as changing of bus stop locations, better education of traffic laws, especially for our non-English speaking citizens, roadway changes such as physical medians, and transparency of the data. It should be noted that there also is no current mechanism to accurately track warnings if required across the various jurisdictions to comply with any mandate. So one thing is clear, warnings in these situations would be detrimental towards the goal of modifying behavior for serious traffic violations, and it could take a child's life. For these reasons, the Anne Arundel County Police Department opposes House Bill 849 and requests an unfavorable committee report for the bill as written. Thank you for your time, and I can answer any questions you may have, sir.
Thanks. We'll start off with Senator Sidnor, then we'll go to Senator Washington, then Senator Folden, then Senator West.
Thank you very much. I have a question.
My apologies. We have one more virtual participant. Sorry about that, Senator.
No worries.
We'll now move on to Mr. Randazzo. You're up.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Randazzo, Executive Vice President of Bus Patrol America, and I'm here to lend my voice as the subject matter expert in opposing HB 849. At Bus Patrol, we're passionate about student safety and more broadly contributing to one of the most pressing transportation causes of our generation, Vision Zero. We're a proud safety partner since 2017 to numerous Maryland communities, serving thousands of Maryland students across nearly 5,000 school buses. And we're privileged to have almost 50 Marylanders on our mission-driven staff. We've learned that Maryland is a microcosm of the nation, rich in diversity, history, and geography. This even extends to its roadway character. I personally met with Delegate Moon and believe his concerns to be genuine. And yet his proposals as drafted in HB 849 are drastic and unprecedented in the student traffic safety space. He notes a handful of roads in his district in need of further thoughtful planning. But instead of a targeted approach, he imposes a confusing, extreme, one-size-fits-all mandate on all communities and public safety professionals who didn't ask for this, putting students at risk. I can tell you this with certainty. Many Maryland students cross multi-lane roads when getting on and off the school bus every day. We all know that distracted driving is on the rise. Unfortunately, HB 849 weakens traffic safety progress achieved by this body and communities across the state. Not one state in our nation mandates its communities to give reckless motorists a free pass for breaking this critical traffic safety law. And while we're certain that HB 849 is the wrong approach, we are committed to partnering with Maryland, and that extends to this body. We hope to collaborate with you, including with Mr. Moon over the coming year, on a more effective solution to carefully balance education and equitable enforcement. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Randazzo. With that, that'll complete the testimony for the opponents of the bill. We'll now switch off to Senator Sidnor. You still got a question? All right, Senator Sidnor, go ahead.
Thank you very much. just to be loud and clear, I don't think this is just a Montgomery County issue. Maybe he's broad it, but the fact of the matter is, it seems that there's state officials that have issues with the way local government are running some of these camera programs, whether it be this one or the school zone cameras. And my experience and what I'm hearing and seeing the delegate go through right now is what I just went through last week with another bill. His bill, from what I can see, it doesn't, what it does is it says, instead of you all collecting a bunch of money and not using it to improve safe streets for children, he's saying if you're not going to use it for safe streets, then you don't get the money. I mean, why it's so difficult for him to get information to understand how this program is working is beyond me. In terms of questions, what does happen with the revenue in Montgomery County's program? And is there anyone who can, I mean, if our expert can answer that, whoever.
Mr. Randazzo, can you answer that? There you go.
Sure. So we have partnerships with communities across the state of Maryland, Prince George's, Montgomery, Carroll, Charles, Cecil, Somerset, Queen Anne's, big and small, urban and more suburban and rural in character. And it's a deep public safety partnership. We
What
provide.
happens with the money?
The money goes, we outfit all of the buses because we believe that all children are deserving of a safer ride to and from school. So this notion of a full fleet deployment of the camera systems is what we subscribe to.
So
However-
the revenue, the revenue that's generated goes into purchasing more cameras?
Not purchasing, but in continually maintaining the cameras and servicing them and servicing the program in perpetuity. And then there's a portion, a large portion of the money goes to the community as well.
What does that mean by goes to the community?
That goes to the county, goes to the school district.
To do, and it's used for what?
I can't speak to how every dollar in the general fund
Are
is.
streets ever redesigned or proposed to be redesigned for the safety of these students?
What's the question?
I said, does the money ever go to propose new, safe, redesigned streets to make certain that these streets are safe for the children?
I can't speak to the budgeting practices of all the counties, but I would say just personally, as a point of personal note, it should go towards noble causes to improve traffic safety and education.
If local governments are being or enabled to do certain or to have these cameras, and state officials are recognizing that local governments aren't doing what was intended to be done, what do you believe that we should be doing? What is our oversight duties?
I mean, sir, I'm not the policymaker. We serve Maryland communities. We try to provide.
So in this case, when this policymaker saw an issue and attempted to work with you all, his testimony is he attempted to work with the local government for 4 to 5 years, and the local government wasn't interested in helping them to resolve this issue. What are we to do?
Understood. I mean, so look,
So similar to, I mean, from what I'm understanding, what's being testified to is you need a $250 penalty to hit the drivers with so that they change the way that they drive, right? So what I'm hearing this delegate say is, in order to make local governments do what they're supposed to do, we're going to hit you all in the pocket. We're going to take back the $250 that we've been giving you until you all act right. Let me ask Ms. Sample. In terms of obtaining this type of data, well, what counties use these cameras?
So I don't have the full list in front of me, but I do know off the top of my head, it's going to be Prince George's, Howard, Baltimore County, Cecil, Anne Arundel, Prince George's. I may have already said Somerset. Yeah, so we do have a handful of them. And I know when you just started making your comments, you started off by saying, this is about all the jurisdictions, but then reverted back to saying that Montgomery County tried very hard to work with their delegation and their council to make these changes. And there's a concern about, what the revenue is used for and if it's being used properly. But what I would go back to is that this is about ensuring safety in the situations that you saw on that video. And if the concern about how the revenue is used is a bigger issue, then it would be a completely different bill altogether. It wouldn't
No,
be
what
this.
the bill seems to do is say that you're not going to get $250 anymore. You're just going to issue citations to let people know that they're violating the law.
Because that changes the behavior and that keeps the
So then
environment
when
safe.
when his bill is put in and says we're not going to let you get this revenue anymore, maybe we'll change local government's behavior.
Was that a question?
All that we're looking for is to make certain that when we in the state give you all local government the power to essentially tax our residents, that you're going to do so within the intent of the law that we're putting forth.
And
And
I
when
was-
you do things that is not within the intent, which I believe this delegate is attempting you to do, when I put forth legislation that intends to make certain that our school children are safe, but you all decide to put cameras up a half mile away from schools, it's not about the children anymore.
I do
It's
think that
about the
is
revenue.
a
And that's what it
different-
looks like.
I do think that's a different bill and a different conversation.
I don't
Like,
think it is.
well, this is a bill that would require us to send warnings instead of citations for a first time offense of something that you just saw in
Understand
those videos is incredibly
It is.
dangerous.
It's
Um,
not
a
safe.
warning,
So
no.
so then the
don't-
question then will
there
become, and I believe,
question.
so the question. The question then becomes, if it's about the children, this delegate, he's testified that maybe bus stops need to be moved. Why would bus stops not be moved?
Why would bus, that's, I think, a collaboration that you'd have to have with your Board of Education in the individual counties. If that is something that that particular county deemed to be appropriate, I think.
When local governments are not using the law as intended by state government, what do you believe our oversight obligation should be?
I don't know that that is a question that's specific to the bill that's in front of us. And I don't know that that's something that I would be able to sit here and speculate on behalf of the counties, but I do think that's a conversation counties would be willing to have. No question.
If, so from what I'm understanding from his testimony, he's been attempting to provide oversight and trying to understand what was going on by getting information from his local government.
And that sounds like a really unique situation that happened in Montgomery County. And again, this is a bill that would restrict every single jurisdiction. And would almost make
Thank
us complicit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few questions. Actually, hope you indulge me a little bit. Bus patrol, I think you guys are up here, right? So why is there a 60-40 split? And is that consistent with our current cameras? Our
Well-
current like traffic stop cameras?
Well,
That's-
when we serve a community, in order to enter into a contract with that community, we're subject to public procurement, bids, RFPs, et cetera. And we have a pretty unique model. Like, this is only one service provider model, but our model is such that we upfront all of the capital associated with installing the systems and maintaining the systems in perpetuity on all of the buses. So in a place like Prince George's County that has over 1,000 school buses, a place like Montgomery County that has over 1,200 school buses, you can imagine that's a pretty high cost proposition. So we make
It's an initial cost that you have to pay, right? But then there's a maintaining it later. So I guess
Yeah.
over time, does that split change over time as that equipment is being used?
it's all subject to whatever the terms are in the RFP or the bid or the contract. So yes, and many times it does. It did in Montgomery County. So it just depends on the precise contract, but yes.
Got it. And I saw a lot of the videos, which are alarming to me to see, but I guess I'm concerned. I guess my concern is, do you guys make recommendations to school systems of where they should stop and where they shouldn't stop based on what you're seeing or what education needs to happen with those schools? Are there recommendations that are made to the school system once you see these types of infractions?
Yeah, so we service school districts and counties and cities and communities across 13 US states. And we see very robust educational programs where folks, and they are in multiple languages, radio, television, print, local papers. So we feel like the ticket is one type of education. It does hurt you in the wallet and you think twice about breaking the law.
No, I understand that. But my point is, you guys make a lot of these, there's a lot of tickets that are given, which is hopefully is changing behavior, right? I'm all for changing behavior. I'm a proponent of these cameras, honestly. I
Right.
think they should be used, and I think that, $250 is a little low for me. We're talking about our kids, on any type of road, but I'm concerned that you see these and you're not making clear recommendations, even from our police department, to the school system of not being on these types of roads. Because as you saw.
Oh, we do though.
Well, the school system, well, you just showed a video where there was kids walking behind the bus. Some of the bus stops were, they didn't have any crosswalks. And also the videos didn't show anything to this bill, which is a median and 4 lanes, right? So
Right.
I would like to see some evidence of what happens in that situation, that scenario, right? Where you have 4 lanes, a median, and how does that help with this situation?
Sure. Senator, when there is a median, the state law does not require cars to stop on the opposite side of the median. But just to your point, I just think it's important to emphasize, we provide all of our county and school district partners with monthly data reporting on the top ticketed locations. Now, I don't work for the school. I can't mandate that stops be moved, but information and knowledge is power. That data is supposed to be used for good every year when route planning occurs.
Yeah, and just my last question is about, I guess it's for the Anne Arundel County. You guys run this program there, and we run it in Prince George's County too. Do you as the police department make any recommendations to the school system directly on not having these bus stops on a main thoroughfare, on a main highway, and maybe a different direction?
Yes, sir. That's an excellent question, sir. And we're a unique situation in Anne Arundel County because we just started our program this school year. So
Got it.
One thing that I want to let everyone here know today is that we are looking at all of these things, and our most important thing of our department is being transparent with the community and with the public. So data, I can give you our exact data right to this day of Anne Arundel County. We've issued 12,000 citations since we started going live in October with our citations. We've approved, 29,000 citations. We've approved 12,000. We've disapproved almost 18,000 citations for a variety of the reasons that are being cited here. It's discretion, and our operators, our officers who are checking these tickets will review the citations. And if it does not meet the requirements of the law, if there's issues with the way that the violation occurred, our officers have the authority to issue warnings, and we don't do warnings after October, but they could issue warnings. We made a decision just to disapprove the citation. So the authority to issue warnings is permitted in the law. The transparency is important. Where the monies go has been asked, at least in Anne Arundel County. Our monies have to go back to the police department for traffic safety enforcement programs. So jurisdictionally, I can only speak for Anne Arundel County, and our program is new, but our data is 100% transparent. We only have 6 months of data, but we've already identified the top 10 locations and locations that we could potentially work with the school board, because bus patrol isn't going to work with the school board. That's our responsibility as a police department to work with the school board and look at potentially changing locations, which is not as easy as everyone can probably think. There's a lot of things that go into where the bus stops are, but we can do anything we can so that we're not just issuing citations. Because when we talked earlier, we said selective traffic enforcement for police is designed to change driver behavior, not to give them a fine.
Right.
So that's not what we're trying to do in Anne Arundel County. We only have 6 months of data, but we fully expect that we're going to be working with the school board to change some of these locations. And we don't have any location where we have thousands of citations that are being issued at one specific spot.
Got it. No, thank you. And I'm sure that program is running well because your chief is from Hyattsville in my district. So, thank you.
Yes,
Appreciate
yes, she is.
it.
Wonderful,
Senator
chief.
We'll go to Senator West and then Senator Kelly and then Senator Folden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So let me ask the various witnesses here. Suppose my view is that either we should collect money and all the money should be used to pay for improvement to the roads to protect the kids, or an education campaign to persuade drivers that they shouldn't violate the law. Either that, or we should pass this bill. So let me, and this bill says in these particular situations, which by the way, we're not talking about 2-lane roads. We're not talking about 4-lane roads where the car is going the same direction as the bus and passing. We're only talking about 4-lane, 6-lane or 8-lane roads where the car is on the other side of the road traveling the other way. So here's my question to you. Suppose we were to amend this bill to leave the system the way it is with these $250 fines and instead require that every dollar collected in these fines has to be spent by the counties or the municipalities to improve the road, to protect the kids, or alternatively, to educate the public about the law. Would you support that? Could I just go down the list and you can say yes or no?
I think it would be up for discussion, definitely.
Well, it's always up for discussion.
Well, I'm here on behalf of a representative for, 24 different counties. And so I think it would be up for discussion,
Okay,
certainly.
how about the next witness?
I'd say 100% of the revenues, the answer would be no. Because the way Bus Patrol runs their program, they need some of those revenues to recoup their capital costs. But certainly some portion of those revenues we would support going to education and improvements in the infrastructure.
Suppose we exempt the revenues that are paid to pay for the cameras and the upgrade, the maintenance of the cameras. Would you support dedicating all the rest of the money to improving the roads or protecting the kids?
I
with
think
an
I saw
education
Steve
campaign?
nod his head.
So Sue? Who?
I'll defer to Steve.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, he's.
You can, sorry, it's this perennial Zoom question. You're on mute. So
You're on
go ahead. There
mute
you
at
go.
the
All right.
moment. We can see your lips moving. How about
I'm not-
the
I'm not,
captain from Anne Arundel County?
Hold on. Steve can answer your question as well.
Okay,
You,
Steve, yes.
I was just
Sure.
saying, I'm not the policymaker for the county, but in many other states that we serve, significant portions of this specific ticket revenue is used for education and awareness and road safety initiatives. So that would be consistent with many of the other states that we already serve.
Okay, great. That answers my question, I think. Thank you.
all right, before we move on, I just want to, since it's along the same line of questioning, just real quick. So the delegate provided us with an OIG report from the county, dove into the prior contracting practices with force multiplier. Now, obviously that made a lot of news and there was a lot of nefarious dealing with force multiplier. So you do a little bit more digging and you find out that Bus Patrol subsumed, you bought out force multiplier. So how much of those practices, how much has changed day to day and how is that procurement process? How is that reworked? How'd you restart that? Do you still have the same people on staff? And the point, because I mean, look, I'm just more worried about, I mean, you're talking about where the money's going. That's, I could read an excerpt from this report, pretty bad. And, the fact that you just completely bought this company out, it'd be interesting to know who's still on staff. What did that next procurement cycle look like?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. As Delegate Moon can attest, we spoke about this candidly in his office the other week. And he even apologized for his previous statements about our company, which were inaccurate. So to be clear, to set the record straight, there are a number of photo enforcement companies that operate in this space across the country. And there happened to be one that had very early nascent technology back in the early 2010s, 2014, 15, 16. And when you're dealing with procurement and elected officials and contracting with governments, there's always a temptation to do the wrong thing. And those folks were held accountable for doing the wrong thing. And it led to a competitive process of the intellectual property being bought out by our company. None of the folks in our leadership team, our management team, executive team are from that past leadership team. It is a completely different company, different technology, light years from that 2016 issue. And we're really proud of our staff, our mission, and the customers that we serve that are growing every day, I think are a testament to our high ethical standards.
No, excellent. I want to make sure that was on the record because that report just came out last year. That is in our bill file forever now. So it's good to have this on the record as well. It would be interesting to find out on the county side who was responsible for executing those procurement practices. I wonder aloud who was responsible in Montgomery County for that, but I guess we'll dig into that a little bit later. Senator Folden.
Oh, I get to go? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So some of my questions have been answered because I kept getting pushed to the bottom of the line. That's what happens. So what is do any of you have any of the data on any number of children that have been struck at any of these locations? Over the past, since,
I'll say on behalf of Bus Patrol has contracts with each of its customers. And while Bus Patrol does collect the data and share it with its customers, it generally is not allowed to release that data. It's up to the county.
okay,
And
Um,
I would just, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I was gonna add that I don't have that.
Sorry.
I was just gonna add that, no, I don't have that data either. And like I would say, other than Montgomery County, a lot of the programs are relatively new, but it's something that we could look into. But earlier, when the sponsor was speaking, you'd mentioned that it wasn't, the number of citations wasn't correlated to the number of kids struck. And I think that's a fantastic thing. And we need to be able to keep doing that.
Okay, great. And then I don't know who would be best suited for this, but does anybody, probably the captain from Anne Arundel, maybe, if he's familiar with the programs? Hey, Captain, how are you?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Are you also, you guys have a red light camera program?
No, sir, and that's a good segue into, we had a red light camera program. And when we analyzed the data, we actually saw that in certain locations, because we based it completely off of locations where crashes occurred. It
Crash
wasn't
data.
to be a
Sure.
money-making venture. So we found that accidents increased at a couple of locations because of people now slamming on their brakes to avoid the red light camera. So eventually, we reduced the amount of cameras, and eventually we disbanded the entire red light program several years ago. So the only automated enforcement program that we currently have is the school bus camera. Once again, because of safety related to children, but we always want to be looking at the
Yeah,
data. That's what
sure.
we're doing.
That's great. That's all any of us should ask. And those camera citations right now on the buses are $250?
Correct. And there's a small service here. I think it's 200, in our county, it's $256. That's what it is.
Okay, and then what are does anybody know what the speed camera, like what
We-
those
we
are for
don't
the
have it,
state?
so
I
can't
mean, I'm
speak to
just,
that. I believe it's $40.
I thought it was 40 or
Yes, sir.
60, and then red light cameras was about the same?
Yes, sir. And
What
I'm not,
was your
I
old
can't speak
citation?
on that because we don't have them anymore.
Do you remember what yours was?
It was, I believe it was the same around $40.
40 or
and
$60.
Our program has been defunct for several years now.
So the reason I was asking is we have these programs that we implement. We have money going out. This one was 500 for like 2 years while it was brand new. So wow, you talk about a nice little, and it's a civil citation, like you couldn't even go to court and ask for a plea deal. You got it. I'm just curious as to I guess the consideration, which was kind of what Senator Sidnor and I went in the back and we spoke briefly. Am I missing something? Why wasn't there something put in there about the training education and then the changing of behaviors? Because I keep hearing people say we want to change behavior. There's only one way to really change someone's behavior. It's the immediacy of action. It's like disciplining a child. You don't wait 2 weeks to send them a violation in the mail and be like, hey, you remember when you spilt your milk? You're in trouble now. We're not doing that. It's the immediacy of action. That's how you change behavior, right? So I disagree with them that whole line where we're talking about that. The only way to do it is to have a police officer there and you get the immediate response, and then other people will hopefully change their behavior. Where I'm asking is with the monies, and I always argued this was a money grab. I always have on these speed cameras. And this is just highlighting where, these are very effective tools. These are necessary, in my opinion. The school bus cameras are important. But we're not sending the money, we're putting it into the general funds, and we're not sending the money back into the program. So I see like crosswalks on that video. Why weren't those crosswalks all of a sudden elevated with a nice hump to it? That changes, that requires driver behavior to change. It's not an option at that point. Because of the program, we have money. We put these in place, it makes the change behavior happen. That's the type of education and training. And then any of the citations, when the citations go out, is there a flyer that goes along with it that says, hey, this is the Maryland Transportation article, and this is the roadway design, and this is still a violation without a raised median, you are still in violation and required to stop, according to motor vehicle law. correct?
Yes, and there, to that last point, you have the citations, when we issued warnings for the warning period, some jurisdictions did not do a warning period. We elected to do an extended warning period in Anne Arundel County
Mhm.
for specific reasons for all of these types of things. That we can work with bus patrol to make that form say whatever we want it to do. But I think what needs to be made clear is that we can already write warnings in these situations. The current law permits warnings to be written. Working with bus patrol to create that mechanism in certain jurisdictions, that can happen. But we also use the review method with our officers to disapprove a lot of the citations that we feel are questionable, that don't rise to the level in situations like you all are.
But my
talking
problem with that is, Captain, is that we're not changing the behavior. We're giving them a warning. I'm all about, I don't want to enable anybody to do anything that's wrong. If it's wrong, but there's a questionable part of, well, did they really know being that far away? It's in law. So why aren't we sending out a paper that's very clear that says, unless it's a raised meeting, you're required to stop. Here's your warning. From now on, you're gonna get a ticket.
Correct. And we're
So we're not doing the training part, is what I'm, the education.
yes, and we can be better. You are 100% correct. We
That's
can
the
get
problem.
better with that. And that's why in my opening remarks, I stated that there are several areas that we can look at, but back to that point, fundamentally, our position as the police, and I believe with the other counties, is we're against the mandatory issuance of warnings because it's highly problematic and it's not going to change behavior. And the law already allows for, if an individual jurisdiction wants to issue warnings, that is totally their prerogative to do that. But to your point, the changing of behavior is because of the seriousness of offense and the amount of the fine. So mandating the warning is probably the biggest issue that our department has, is with mandating.
Let's take
we
that out
have
of the
to issue
equation. Let's talk about the requirement and responsibility of government to educate their citizens who operate on the
You are
roadways.
100% correct, and I agree.
That
with
we
you
have
100%.
completely, I'm not hearing anybody say that they've done anything in the education or even road design components. And also, why are we doing this? Like, why not move it up to, I'm not gonna get into that part about where the bus stops are, but
Right.
there's ways to make them more safe. And it doesn't sound like we've done anything with those monies except put them into somebody else's district in the county.
And
And-
full disclosure, we haven't really received any real monies because our program is so new. We're just starting to get where revenues are actually coming in. Our first court cases were just heard in December for
Right.
people that decided to take the route to go to
Okay.
district court. So we're a unique situation that we're a newer jurisdiction. But education, we've been pushing out education in Anne Arundel County since this started. Just 2 weeks ago, we pushed out PSAs again as an agency in both English and Spanish. And we continue to work with our community organizations to try to push that education
I
out.
just remember when this
Excellent,
bill
Captain.
first came up, that it
Okay.
was a requirement that the education component was a part of this. And it doesn't sound like that there was any education done. Because people are creatures of habit and they would believe that they're far enough away that they wouldn't be required to stop. Even though I don't agree with it, but the only reason I don't agree with this is because I happen to know the traffic law that says they can't. So we failed them in that. So thank you.
All right, Senator Kelly. All right, great. We are still on the first bill of 15, just a reminder. All right. Seeing no further questions, thank you all very much. All right, with that, that'll conclude the hearing
Thank you.
for House Bill 849. We'll now move on to House Bill 819. And I believe that is also Delegate Moon.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a local bill. It's got unanimous support from the Montgomery County House and Senate delegation, and it's pretty simple in what it's asking. Basically, this says that for residential development within a quarter mile of a Purple Line or metro station, that Montgomery County cannot require that housing has to have parking or dig underground parking. It doesn't mean that people aren't going to build parking. They absolutely will. This is simply a deregulation bill in effect that just says you don't need to spend so much time worrying about those level of details. Just by way of background, California actually did this for a half mile within metro stations statewide as a bill for both commercial and residential property. And so again, this is quarter mile from major transit stations that the state is paying billions of dollars for. And why is this? Because in Montgomery County, to dig underground parking for every single bedroom in a condo building, as basically is currently required, is very expensive. The chair of our delegation testified that during her time as a Rockville council member, she recalls it adding $50,000 to unit costs to do that. And so again, if you're talking about needing to finance and plan a project, what this bill proposes is basically a much freer free form for what these buildings can have in terms of parking. Again, this is basically buildings that are on top of metro stations and light rail stations. And current county policy basically says if it's a house, you got to have 2 parking spots. And on average, if it's a apartment or condo, it roughly needs a parking spot for every bedroom or so. So this policy, interesting, you're going to hear, I didn't think we were going to have a hearing on this because to be perfectly frank about this, this has induced our county, I believe, to take a look at this themselves. And I think there's going to be a lot of goodwill from our delegation to allow our new county council to have a first crack at this before we really go through with preemption. That being said, I was intrigued that our county park and planning department decided to sign up an opposition. They are a state agency opposing the state having their say on this matter. And it was in fact, our former planning board chair suggested this policy as a reform over 12 years ago. And I just want to read you a tweet. When we passed this local bill out of the House of Delegates unanimously, there was a very interesting tweet that I saw in response. Amazing. When I worked for the Montgomery County Planning Commission, we discussed this during every sector plan, but it was too tough of a political hill each time. Good the state is getting involved and just doing it. You're about to hear from these folks in opposition, I believe, but their own staff and the former chair actually suggested this almost a decade ago. Local bill. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Delegate. Questions from the committee? Well, before we move on to the, go ahead. Yeah. Senator West.
Do we have a delegation letter?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Delegate. We'll now move on to the proponents. We have Mr. Reed. Dan Reed is here. And then we will have Carrie Kasicki joining us virtually. Dan, welcome. Good to see you.
For having me. Push the button, right?
I'm going to come up to the podium so that just so the camera can catch you on both sides. If that's
Be on television. All right, can you hear me? All right. Good afternoon. My name is Dan Reed and I'm the Regional Policy Director for Greater Washington. We are a nonprofit that works to advance racial, economic, and environmental justice in land use, transportation, and housing throughout the DC area. We support this bill and we've worked with the delegate on it for several months now. You have my written testimony, so I'm going to go off script a little bit, but basically to say, this bill is very straightforward, right? It says the county can't require parking for housing developments near Metro and the Purple Line, right? It doesn't mean developers can't build parking. It doesn't mean there won't be any parking. These are valid concerns and critiques we've heard in the past. There will be people who live in these communities and need to drive a car to places, and they will continue to do so. I can speak from personal experience. I lived in an apartment building barely not even a block from the Silver Spring Metro station, and we had structured parking garage. I had a car, I rarely moved it, and that garage is probably a third empty at any given time. Why is parking an issue? Because it's expensive to build. Structured parking can cost upwards of 30 grand a space, sometimes 100 grand a space if you're underground. I've worked as a transportation planner in communities in Maryland and Northern Virginia doing traffic and transportation studies, and found that the biggest indicator of how much people are going to use a parking garage for a residential building is their proximity to the train. Not surprisingly, people who live farther from the train drive more. I know there have been concerns about whether this would preempt the county's authority. It does not prevent the county from zoning. It does not prevent the county from doing any of the things it already does with land use in these communities. It simply says you cannot require parking. And I do think that is in line with Montgomery County's values whether it comes to tackling climate change or encouraging economic development in our downtowns. So we hope y'all will support this bill as well. Thank you.
all right. Thank you very much. Sir, Senator Muse has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming down. I missed something. What did you mean when you said parking space at a certain level will cost $100,000?
This is to construct.
Oh, to construct, okay. Please.
This is to construct parking. Structured parking as opposed to
More
like
than-
parking
all
lot.
right, gotcha.
Yeah, the structure can be expensive. If you're digging into the ground, it's even more expensive.
Thank you, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan. And seeing that, no further questions, we'll switch to our virtual participant is, here we go, Carrie Kasicki, you're up. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Carrie Kasicki, and I'm the Montgomery County Advocacy Manager for the Coalition for Smarter Growth. We advocate for walkable, bikeable, transit-oriented communities as the best way to grow our region. And we're advocating in support of this bill. So this bill will support the increased development of affordable housing near transit in Montgomery County and help us reach our climate goals by making it easier for people to live car-free and car-light lifestyles in more affordable housing. So this bill is in line with what we already decided are the goals for our county in the Thrive 2050 General Plan, which passed late last year. We decided to move away from decades of policies that favored investment in cars over people. And so what this will do is help us reduce vehicles miles traveled, increase non-auto driver mode share by building more housing in locations where people don't really need to have cars. And so it will help us move away from car dependence and towards our equity and climate goals. It will also, as Dan pointed out, make it less expensive to build housing near Metro. Parking can be a huge cost of the construction in those projects. So this bill will help us build more units for more people near transit and create more opportunities for us to build affordable units near transit where it's especially lacking. So this is good climate policy. It's good housing policy. It's already in line with the equity and climate and transportation and development goals that we've set for ourselves in our general plan. So we would strongly support passage of this bill as very much in line with the direction that Montgomery County has already decided we're going to follow. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right. With that, that will conclude the testimony for the proponents of the bill. We'll now switch to the opposition panel and we'll hear from Jordan Balcom. Oh, hey, what's going on? How are you? And then, then we have Mr. Zoints. You'll be next. Okay. All right.
Hi,
Hey.
greeting, Chair Smith and the entire committee. Thank you for your time this afternoon. My name is Jordan Balcom Colbert, and I'm the Government Affairs Liaison for the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission in the Office of General Counsel. Our Montgomery County Planning Board recently voted to oppose HB 819 due to various concerns. We have submitted written testimony in opposition on the record and ask that you take these concerns into consideration when voting on the bill. Later, you will hear from our Montgomery County Planning Board Chair, Jeffrey Zients, in regards to why this bill is an issue for the commission in further detail. However, I testify before you today to ask you to consider these three important factors. One, this bill as written is unclear on how it will impact Montgomery County Planning Board's regulatory decision-making role for residential projects that may require a certain amount of parking. Two, this bill applies the term residential without restriction. Some residential uses are more comparable to and reasonably close to commercial enterprises. Therefore, more clarification on this bill is needed. Three, the absence of in-depth technical review on the impact of this bill leaves no telling what the consequences will be for the developmental process in the county. It is important to note that the Planning Board and Planning Department have generally supported the policy of minimizing parking requirements near transit. However, the implementation of this policy should take the various impacts into account. And for this reason, these tools should be crafted at the local level in consultation with all stakeholders. Again, my name is Jordan Balcom Colbert, and I thank you for your time and ask for you to provide an unfavorable report on this bill.
Thank you very much. We have one question from Senator Muse.
Yes.
For coming down for your testimony. Just a
Hello.
question, because we do get a lot when people say, well, we're not clear on this and asking us to make a decision on, we're not clear about this, we don't know about this, but most of the time, isn't it some things that you can work out and go back and find the answers to, sit down together and find, because some of the things you said, it sounds like it's very simply answered. if you can go back and find it and then you're clear on it. On some of these, in those areas where if you sit down with those who wrote, who are behind the bill and work those things out so that you don't come and say, we're not clear, because we're not clear either.
Right.
But we think you all in a better position to work with those in your own county to become clear on these issues so that you can say, this is the reason we are opposed. This is a specific reason. Is that something that you all can?
Yes, I believe clarification can be ironed out, and we have hoped earlier on during the travel of the bill that some of those concerns would have been addressed. So we do believe that the clarification can be worked out between all stakeholders.
Thank you. When you say addressed by whom?
Within the language of the bill, we had hoped that the concerns that we had would have been addressed earlier on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
See no further questions. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
You
Thanks
too.
for being here.
Thank you.
All right, excellent. We'll go on to Mr. Zions. You're up. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Chair of the Montgomery County Planning Board. I'm speaking in opposition of the bill, but not in opposition to the policy. As others have stated, Montgomery County does want to recognize the availability of transit and reduce parking near Metro and near the Purple Line. But we do respect our council's ability to do that and want to work with them to do it. There's the number of technical issues with this is that it only goes to the Montgomery County District Council, whereas the Department of Permitting Services and the Planning Board are also implementing agencies of parking. Parking is part of zoning. It's not separate from that. This sort of takes a hacksaw to a problem that I think needs a scalpel sometimes. It talks to residential uses, and residential uses includes household living, group homes, and of course accessory uses. The group living includes senior citizen housing. So it goes into things that are far more than are just single family housing. If there is progress on the bill, certainly as the senator noted, we'd be willing to help out on the technical issues. But as it stands, we're opposed to this bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, that'll conclude the hearing and the testimony in the hearing for House Bill 819. Thank you very much, Delegate Moon. All right, next, we will finally move on to House Bill 219.
Usually when I get here, I ask for a higher microphone, but I don't think it's going to work over here. So I hope you all can hear me. Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman Smith, esteemed members of Judicial Proceedings Committee. I am Delegate Todd Morgan from St. Mary's County. And so I present to you House Bill 219, St. Mary's County Golf Carts on Public Highways report. The original bill gave St. Mary's County the ability to put these golf carts on highways and had to come to General Assembly, and it's been turned down. So working with ENT, we have amended the bill to what's in front of you today, which has passed through the third reading over on the House side. And basically what the bill does, it follows sort of, I would call it the rules of golf carts. And what this bill will do is require the St. Mary's County delegation or St. Mary's County commissioners to create a report recommending the locations of where these golf carts can go. The bill will have a list of the streets the county wants to allow golf carts on with a detailed map of the area. And the bill notes the appropriate areas of consideration golf carts must A, be in an isolated area on island or peninsula, B, have public or private docking, C, be a viable destination for boating community or tourism, D, have shopping, dining, water activities, or other attractions, and finally contain no state highways where the speed limit exceeds 30 miles per hour. The report is being presented to you today. The report from the St. Mary's County Commissioners will be due no later than December 1st, 2023. And I ask your consideration of favorable report on this bill.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Delegate. We only have one rule in JPR about the golf cart bills, and that is we demand a site visit.
Excuse me, please.
We just demand a site visit, that's all.
Y'all can come to anytime you want.
There you go.
And we'll get you crabs and oysters, a cold beer. How's that?
Now you're speaking our language. All right.
Thank you
that's
very
great.
much.
There you go. All right. Thanks.
Pleasure,
It's
gentlemen.
a pleasure. Thanks a
Thanks.
lot. All right, with that, that'll conclude the hearing for House Bill 219. We'll now move on to Delegate Healy with House Bill 391. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Delegate Ann Healy. This is House Bill 391. It's a bill that requires a parking citation issued by a political subdivision, state agency, or third-party contractor to include a box that the person issued the citation may check to indicate that the registration plates cited were not issued for the vehicle described in the citation. And this has been worked on for a while. It comes from a place where I had a constituent issue where a senior citizen had their handicap tag stolen. They reported it, they got new tags, but the stolen tag showed up on another car that was left at a parking garage and got a ticket. And one thing led to another. And this was a person who was elderly and had mobility issues in the first place. And he did everything he was supposed to, but he missed his day in court, and I had to intervene as a legislator to talk to the people at Prince George's County to see if we could get that straightened out. It did get straightened out, but it showed me that there was a problem. And this bill is, I think, the solution to the problem. All it requires is that the new citations have this box on it and people can say, this tag doesn't match this car. And it's already available on the MVA. They have a portal that the local government or third party who is doing parking enforcement can look it up and see whether it matches or it doesn't match. And so it doesn't put an extraordinary burden on people who have their license plates stolen. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. I did work on this with a couple of people. Maryland Municipal League came up with some the amendments that are in here, and they were endorsed by Baltimore City Parking Authority because they didn't like the idea. The word investigation was in the original bill, and it's really verification, and it's a very simple thing. So I hope that with that, they did withdraw their opposition, and I hope that I can get your support.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Delegate. That was literally my only question was saw opposition on the House side, and I guess you've
It's all
introduced
resolved.
amendments to assuage their concerns. So excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. With that, that'll end the hearing for House Bill 391. We'll now move on. Is Delegate Amprey still here? I know he was here earlier, but if he's coming back. Oh, yes. Delegate Weibel's here. So let's go House Bill 1194. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. Good to be with you and the members of JPR. I am Delegate Weifel. Please present House Bill 1194, Town of Sharpsburg, parking of vehicles and restrictions. If you're not familiar with the town of Sharpsburg, it is a small town in Washington County, first laid out in 1763 by Joseph Chaplin as the first town in Washington County. The town was devastated on September 17th, 1862, as residents witnessed the bloodiest single day of the Civil War, as 23,110 soldiers were left dead, missing, or wounded during the Battle of Antietam. The reason I mention this is that town leaders over the years have done an impressive job in maintaining the town in much the same presence as it existed in the 1800s. That is why they have requested House Bill 1194 to be submitted, which prohibits parking of F, G, H, and P vehicles on any street or highway within the town limits. These classes generally include tractor trailers and school and passenger buses. The parking of vehicles in these classes is allowed if it relates to the immediate use being made of the vehicle. The town does not operate its own police force, and the bill is necessary to allow for enforcement by county or state police departments. With that, I conclude my testimony and ask for a favorable report on House Bill 1194. You're not allowed any questions.
All right. Questions? Sure, Senator McKay? No questions?
He has no questions.
Woo-hoo-hoo. All right. I got it. All right. Hey, thank you very much. Let me see. All right. So with that, that'll end the hearing for House Bill 1194. And then I think we have the sponsor for House Bill 747 is Delegate Pastor still here in the back. There you go. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Waldstreicher, members of the Judicial Proceedings Committee. I am Delegate Cheryl Pasteur, and I am here with purpose of repealing the very antiquated authority of the Division of Correction to arrange for inmates who are not needed on State Highway Administration roads to be employed in agricultural work during any part of the year at a camp in St. Anne's County or any other county with a similar group. I point out that in 1916, when it was placed into law concerning prisoners on road gangs, that sometime after that, in 1943, Senate Bill 285, through an amendment, it was added that between the end of November and the end of August, prisoners could be taken from road gangs and placed on farms in Queen Anne's County or wherever needed to do for free on for-profit farms agricultural work. Then in between 1955 and 59, there was no other legislation connected with it. In 1999, it was suggested that this antiquated law be removed from our legislation. It didn't happen. So now we're in 2023. And I'm asking that finally we remove this law from our books. It is not only antiquated, but it's embarrassing and it's inflammatory. And I would just point out that in a recent year or two other states that had it languishing in their laws made a decision to bring it back and call it a deterrent to crime. So I'd like for us, before that happens here by anyone who thinks on a county level, that it will be a positive enforcement of laws, that we remove it from our books. And I'm hoping that you will see it the same way and vote favorable for it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Delegate. Senator Muse.
The farms that they presently work on, and I remember this from 1999. I thought somewhere along the line they would have gotten rid of this. I remember that, and the question that came up, and I know it's rhetorical, but so everyone else will know, these are the farms of individual personal owners of farms.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Right. And we brought that up because at the same time, we had the same thing going on down here where they were polishing the banisters on the steps and just to look for a place down here.
Yes.
So that was wrong. And we were trying to put this together to make sure that we did away with this, period. It is what it is. It is what it sounds like it is.
It is.
And there are other deterrents. So thank you for putting in the bill. I think it works well, don't you?
Thank you. And the other name for it was the chain gang law. And certainly that is not
Antiquated
positive.
and-
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in Cool Hand Luke,
Mm.
he gets assigned to a chain gang, as I recall, and escapes. So I had no idea that this was going on in Maryland. Do you know when the last time was that this law was actually used by the correctional services?
But the last time it was checked was in well, it was in 1951, it was checked. And it was not happening. So between 1951, 1959, it had not been checked. So people periodically, just when someone wanted to give it life again, it was checked, but there was no action. But then in 1999, it was looked at and decided by committee that it really was antiquated. So I asked DLS to just check, to dig in and see if anyone else after that time had asked about it. And no one had. There'd been no occurrences of the chain gang for agricultural purposes being used, even though a discussion had arisen about whether now you could do that and maybe pay the prisoners to do it. And in the research, seeing that we have horse farms and all manner of other things that have cropped up, and I'm pretty sure you'll hear more about that through another bill. But in terms of for no pay on for-profit farms, it's been a good while. So it has just languished on the books. And as I said, in 99, it was, we were told it could be removed and it didn't happen.
Well, thank you for the interesting history lesson. I appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. Failure to communicate.
Thank you very much. I'm just curious, where did the idea for this bill come from? I mean, how did this come across?
How did I get this?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, in conversation actually with Vice Chair Moon, we talked about it. And we talked about it at the beginning of February. And I admit, I said, I'm your person because I am absolutely offended by the whole thing. Please, I really want to get this started. And I find it the absolute perfect time to start it. And then as Delegate Moon also talked to a couple other delegates about some other views of that picture. But I just personally was so offended by it and do know Houlihan Luke ever so well, having seen it many times. That just raised my angst level. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Senator Sidnor. Further questions from the committee? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
It's
you.
a pleasure seeing you. Thank you for being here.
you.
All right. With that, that'll conclude the hearing for House Bill 747. We'll now move on to Delegate Phillips with House Bill 761. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Vice Chair is not here, but thank you all. And so Delegate Pasteur has really done my job because House Bill 761 is very similar. And part of this, I will say, thanks to Vice Chair Moon, is having us to take a look at the code and look at things that just no longer make sense. And this bill attempts to address one section of the code, 9507, Correctional Services Article, which enables the Maryland State and County Correctional Facilities, and I'm gonna use this word, to require male prisoners to work on public roads. Specifically, it states each male inmate of a state or local correctional facility may be required to work on a public road in accordance with sections 9508 through 9514. It's that word required that gives me pause, similar to Delegate Pasteur's comments on the last piece. You've kind of heard the history, right? But one of the things that we got to understand is the history of chain gangs really was Black code. And it was really only enforced as it related to African Americans. It was a way after slavery for saying, you know what, we still need this free labor, and we're going to take these individuals, we're going to charge them with vagrancy, we're going to charge them with petty theft, and then we're going to put them to work. That's the history. And so in essence, this is a vestige of slavery, quite frankly. And so the objective is to just have it eliminated from the code, to take out the word required. I don't want to take out an inmate who decides if the correctional facilities put someone on the road that they want to do that because that's the way they want to get out and experience because of good behavior, not taking it away. But to require a person to do that, given the history of our country, one of the things that was asked in the last bill hearing was, well, is this still being done? And there is a reality. There are 7 states that still require basically chain gang labor. And I don't want us to be in that posture. Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Texas. That's not Maryland. And so for that reason, I asked for a favorable on House Bill 761. Let's remove it. Any questions, Mr. Chair?
Any questions from the committee? All right. Y'all are making Baltimore County proud today. Thank you very much. That ends the hearing. Next, let's see.
So Delegate Fair is here.
Okay, great. House Bill 999, Delegate Fair.
Good afternoon, members of the Judicial Proceedings Committee. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. For the record, I'm Delegate Chris Fair here today to present HB 999, legislation repealing the requirement for corporations to file reports in Title 11 of the tax property article before the Maryland State Department of Assessments and Taxation can accept articles of dissolution for a domestic corporation or issue a certificate of termination to a foreign corporation. This legislation will create greater parity between business entities. Currently, only corporations registered with SSTAT must file past due annual reports and accompanying filing fees before dissolving their company and ending their registration with the department. LLCs, partnerships, and trusts are not subject to this requirement, thus unfairly penalizing corporations. This inequitable burden causes some businesses to refuse to file their dissolution out of fear of being forced to pay past annual report fees. Therefore, the state and local jurisdictions operate with incorrect data, leading to confusion, additional fees, and challenges for all parties involved. This bad debt over the years creates an undue burden on the staff of SSTAT as they wait for the past due amounts to lead to forfeiture. The current law places an undue burden on small businesses that may be struggling financially or may have other valid reasons for wanting to dissolve or terminate their registration with SSTAT. Small businesses often operate with limited resources, and requiring them to pay exorbitant fees to file past due annual reports only adds to their financial woes. This bill helps streamline the process for business owners and empower staff at SSTAT to inform their local partners and with updated dissolution or termination of businesses. I would like to address the small fiscal note with this bill. The Department of Legislative Services did calculate using the worst case scenario of 500 entities no longer filing their annual report. It's important to note that many of these businesses have not and will not fund their annual filing report, meaning that much of this tiny lost revenue outlined in the fiscal note will be lost regardless of action on this bill. In summation, by eliminating this requirement, House Bill 999 will create a level playing field for all businesses in Maryland, eliminate hardship on small businesses wishing to dissolve or terminate their business, create a cleaner list of operational businesses in Maryland, assist counties in better identifying operational versus defunct businesses, and thus creating a more business-friendly environment in Maryland. For these reasons, I urge your support for HB 999 and respectfully request a favorable report.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Delegate Fair. We have a question from
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Chair.
West.
After our somewhat contentious conversation yesterday, you'll be happy to know that I am asking for recognition to congratulate you for coordinating with the Maryland State Bar Association's business law section on this bill. That whenever bills come up which relate to business laws, I always ask that question. Have you talked to the business law section? And the fact that you spoke to them and secured their support is great.
Thank
I
you.
commend you. Thanks.
Appreciate that, Senator. Thank you.
That is true. He does ask if we coordinated with the Bar Association.
Yeah.
No, so it's good. All right. Further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Twice in 2 days. There you go.
I'll be back tomorrow.
Oh, there you, hey.
I'm
All right, thanks a lot. With that, that'll conclude the hearing for House Bill 999. I see that Delegate Valderrama is here. Are you here for the Prince George's delegation? Come on up. House Bill 435.
Oh, yes, move favorable. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the esteemed JPR committee. I see we have new members on this committee from Prince George's. And I see my esteemed senators here. Oh, and the esteemed Bill Folden. Wow, we just go on and on here. Right? I started off right? Okay, cool. All seriousness, thank you for having me here this afternoon. For the record, Chris Valderrama here to present House Bill 435. Prince George's County Speed Camera Monitoring Systems, Maryland Route 210. I will start off by asking for a favorable report, and I am sure if you have any additional questions, should you have any here, my esteemed senator can answer them for you as well, since he represents the same district. So with that said, I just want to give a very brief introduction to this measure. I know it's not new to all of you, but for those who it may be new to, in our district, in District 26 in Prince George's County, which also encompasses Charles County, we share this state road, the state highway, which is Route 210. Just so you know, it was never designed when it was designed to be the major commuter route that it is today. It was originally built during World War II to connect to the city, to Indian Head Proving Ground. And in the mid-50s, the road was transferred from federal to state control and became Route 210. So over time, there's been many housing subdivisions, retail, schools, and the like. And because of this development, citizens in my district, in our district, use Route 210 as their, what you would call their main street. So where they go about their daily lives. So with that said, the Prince George's portion of Route 210 runs 14.4 miles from the Charles County line to the DC line. And the road changes from a 4-lane divided highway to a 6-lane divided highway with a speed limit that is supposed to be 55 miles per hour. So what you may be wondering why we are seeking legislation for additional cameras on 210 is that approximately 80 people have been killed on that 14.4 mile stretch of Route 210 since 2007, and leading the news media to call it, unfortunately, the highway of death. Last year alone, 10 people were killed and serious accidents were and continue to be a daily occurrence. So if you think about that for just a moment, you visualize the hundreds of miles of state roads in our state, and last year's death toll on all Maryland roads, including our major highways like Route 270, Route 50, was 514 persons. So by comparison, there were 10 deaths on this short 14.4 mile segment of Route 210. So as you might suspect, the usually high death rate, there's serious speeding issues endangering the health and lives of more law-abiding citizens. So in the 7-month period between April and October of last year, over 600 individual vehicles were clocked going over 90 miles per hour. So that's 35 miles an hour over the legal speed limit. And you'll recall it's a 4-lane turning into a 6-lane divided highway with significant local traffic. So the worst, this isn't even the worst of the problem that we have on 210. One individual was clocked, if you can believe it, and I'm still trying to figure out what kind of vehicle it is, clocked at 165 miles per hour on this road, while others exceeded 110. So, so clearly there are some irresponsible drivers on the road, and that's putting it lightly. But what about the law enforcement? Senator, stop. Why can't they put a stop to this dangerous excessive speed? So as a result of and I'm still trying to understand ever since I got elected, to understand where this memo of understanding came from, we have a unique MOU between Maryland State Police and Prince George's Police that was executed 23 years ago. Prince George's Police Department has the primary responsibility for policing Route 210, even though it's a state road. So though the Maryland State Police routinely patrol the Charles County portion of Route 210, they merely provide backup on Prince George's portion of the same state road, which is very unusual. So with inadequate staffing and some complex law enforcement challenges unrelated to speed control in our county, it's nearly impossible to adequately police Route 210. So because of this unique situation, Prince George's County, we were granted authority from this assembly to use speed cameras as an adjunct method of speed control on Route 210. So we have moved this out in the House. This authority will sunset at the end of this year. So unless the committee acts, which the House did, and I'm seeking the approval of the Senate side for this. Currently, we have 3 authorized cameras. The House just moved and supported 6 additional cameras for Route 210. It's also asking for the authorization. Initially, we were asking for 10, just putting it out there, but we got 6. So we are very grateful for that. And I just wanted to mention that each summer, we have a committee known as the Route 210 Safety Committee, and some of my constituents are here with us if they would raise their hands, who are staunch advocates from our district who are here every time we have this legislation. And I just wanted to note they're an independent group of citizens who just out of their own goodness of their heart and advocates of our citizenry holds a memorial service every year for those who have died along Route 210. So each year, the number of deaths is unknown, but there could be 4 or 5, or there could be 10 or more. But what we do know is that all the deaths are unnecessary. And I'm sure we can all attest to that. This legislation, honestly, I believe is emergency legislation. I did not submit it as such, but I would seek your support for it. And I would like to end by saying that the vote came out of the House 17-6. And we have the support of County Executive Alsobrooks, the County Council, and the County Police, which I definitely think is very important, because when I seeked to introduce this measure years ago, as I know, no one likes speed cameras. They believe it's just a revenue generator, but I think I have brought forth the reality of what Route 210 brings. And we can see if it really is that much of a revenue generator, then just slow down, basically, is what I'm here to say. So with that, I ask a favorable report on House Bill 435.
Thank you very much for introducing this, and thank you because you've been involved in this a long time also. I'm happy that you're one of our delegates. I started in 1994 with your dad, that side by side there.
That speaks to someone's age.
That's correct. That is correct.
I age like a fine wine.
Now, he's talking about my age. I know what he's talking about.
As do you.
One of the things that many may not know is that Route 210, and I have to cross it to go any way I need to go. I cross it because I refuse to drive it. I'd rather take the back roads to anywhere to get to 95 rather than 210. AAA has labeled that or has said in their studies that road is the 6th worst road in the nation. And we're talking about whether you're in New York, whether you are in California, and the reason that happens is because it's been used for a raceway for so long, and we've had some of the worst accidents there. That's number one. And number 2, a lot of the persons who were killed on that road are persons who live in the senior center on between Fort Washington Road and Palmer Road, and they're trying to cross the street with 4 different lights changing. And if you're coming up that road at 70 or 80 miles an hour, nobody in a wheelchair, and they cross in motorized wheelchairs, and some have been killed because you can't stop, you can't get out of the way, and they recognize that that is one of those unique roads where there's a unique problem. I'll stop at this and ask you a question. I realize that people say it's revenue generating. A whole lot of things we do, we really do it to generate revenue, but that's second place to the number of lives taken on that highway. And I would ask them who say that, I would ask, what else would you suggest to these people who have lost loved ones because people are reckless on 210 more than any place else? You said that they took 4 of the cameras out. I know you originally asked for 10.
Well, we currently have 3.
I know.
So-
Which
yes,
does nothing
yes.
because
So
everyone knows where they are.
Came back, well, I really wanted 10. We
Right.
really wanted 10, but
Right.
I know how it works up here.
I got
So
it.
you have to negotiate, and so came out with 6, and I'm grateful for that.
Okay, thank you.
If you would like to amend it to 10, that would be awesome. But,
And we go to conference and get.
but I know, but then, yeah.
No, we go to conference, we'll get at least 8, don't you think? Might try it as a strategy. Don't tell them though. Thank you, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing the wonderful bill forward.
You're
Delegate.
quite welcome.
So I'm looking at the numbers here and I'm trying to find where, so we had a really lively discussion earlier about cameras on school buses. And I'm trying to find where it says about the allocation of the funds from this bill, where they would go. Because as I look, like countywide, Prince George's County does pretty good on these speed cameras. I mean, they got 7 million almost in 18, 6 million in 19, 4.5 million in 20, 4.3 million in 21, and
So the original bill,
3.6 million in 22.
when I initially introduced this measure, the Environment and Transportation Committee found it upon themselves that whatever revenue was generated would go into the infrastructure needs of Route 210.
Has that been the case?
Well, there hasn't been a whole lot generated, but that is supposed to be the case. Is
Um,
that the case? Yes.
So would that be to do like for the traffic calming to slow down the behaviors or because there's only so much you can do on 210?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot that has transpired over 210. So we haven't so I will say one of the issues that was brought up by the subcommittee chair and ENT was, well, perhaps you need more lights, perhaps you need to slow. The problem, if you're not familiar with 210, if you come to our district, we removed traffic lights because it was hindering the traffic pattern. I mean, the rush hour is, I know rush hour is bad everywhere, but it was extremely difficult to get through on 210, which is why we waited so long to get the infrastructure overpass so that we could keep traffic moving. The problem is when it's not rush hour traffic and
It's
you
now
have
a
the stretch-
raceway.
It is, and I live not too far from 210. I
Yeah.
can hear it from my
So-
windows.
I guess that's my question is now you've taken away traffic devices to help traffic because there was too much of a backup. You said you had 10 fatalities last year. And I guess in this location specifically, there was 9,100 citations issued on 210,
Mhm.
which is like $550,000. I'm just curious, is there anything that are we gonna, it just goes back into this 210 then? The money's already earmarked. Is that what?
It is, but if you would like to amend it to put it to other sources, I mean, if the senator sees it so,
I'm
Except it can't go to his county.
Frederick.
I will say,
We didn't want to-
I would like to add, Senator Foley, what I didn't mention, I had another piece of legislation that was hand in hand with this bill measure that did not move out of the House, and it was to increase penalties because of the excessive recidivism that is happening on 210. So when I mentioned these speeders who are going at excessive speeds, they're only getting $40 fines, which I think we can all agree is grotesque and needs to be addressed. So having said that, I just wanted to put that measure in there as well as to the need for this. And I welcome you to come to District 26 so you can see for yourself.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How you doing? Just
Hello.
a quick question. This is like a highway, so I'm assuming there's no red traffic lights on anything.
We have traffic lights, but there was one main intersection near our, you won't know the area, but in front of a Brookside condominiums, that's right off of 210 and Huntington Towers. There was a light there, but it was very difficult for residents in those residences to enter and exit, having to compete with, the
So
congestion
there wasn't like 4 lights, the lights were just one way.
Pardon?
There weren't not lights for both directions, I mean, for.
Well, there were, but I mean, I don't know how to better describe it other than it was definitely something that had to be addressed. I mean, like I said, I know there's traffic everywhere, but it was excessive. If you know the stretch of 210, the traffic was just crazy, just ridiculous.
And the cameras that you all currently have, are they?
We requested that they be mobile so that drivers would not know where they
Where
are
they
all
are.
the
They're
time.
currently mobile?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just real quick, I can't remember, but did the Senate delegation vote on this? Does the senator? Today, got it. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so letter coming soon.
Awesome. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Delegate Valderrama. Thank you. Good to
Thank
see
you,
you.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of JPR.
All right, with that, that'll end the hearing for House Bill 435. We'll now move on to Delegate Amprey with House Bill 416.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you all for having me today. Thank you for working with my schedule. Had a busy day today. So House Bill 416, the Resources and Education for All Prisoners Act, which we call the REAP Act, is being introduced for the purpose of improving the inmate rehabilitation process by increasing inmates' access to and facilitating their success in higher education programs. This is more than just a policy thing for me. This is very personal. Growing up, my father and my brother are both incarcerated at different points in my life. Both were incarcerated at the same time. So I felt the effects of how our systems don't work when it comes to rehabilitating people, how our systems are not working in order to keep us safe. I find that we've had a lengthy conversation in this state over the past few years about repeat violent offenders, about the issue of those who have been incarcerated reoffending. And I think the conversation that does need to be had needs to be had not about how we can be more stern on these individuals. It's about how can we better support these individuals while they are incarcerated. When we have their full autonomy, we should be doing a better job of providing these services, and that's what this bill will strive to do. The REAP Act requires the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services to assist inmates in assessing federal Pell Grants by consulting with higher education institutions located in Maryland. Additionally, the REAP Act requires the Department of Labor and Employment, Department of Education, and the Department of Human Services to work together to set goals for the number of inmates in education programs and establish a system that tracks the number of inmates and their progress in education programs, which we currently do not have the proper systems of tracking and ensuring that they are completing and getting what they can get out of their time while they're serving. House Bill 416 also requires the government to provide annual funding for the department to use for education programs, including marketing for education programs to inmates and the tracking systems for education programs. Lastly, the REAP Act establishes a prison education delivery reform commission, which will translate the education tracking data into planning programs and policies to improve inmate rehabilitation through education. The data shows that when you are providing inmates with better educational resources and wraparound services as a whole, we can reduce recidivism rates at an alarming rate. Right now, Maryland has a recidivism rate of roughly 40%, which places it amongst the top 25% recidivism states in the country. The evidence is clear. Inmates who participate in higher education programs while incarcerated are 28% less likely to recidivate than those who do not. Therefore, it's critical that we increase inmates' access to higher education in order to improve their rehabilitation post-incarceration and reduce the likelihood of reincarceration later on, and also ultimately keep our communities more safe. And the other thing I just want to highlight here is that I recently spoke with our Department of Corrections and got just some, data on how much we're spending per inmate. Numbers indicate we spend upwards of almost $50,000 to incarcerate someone a year. And thinking about what we could do to reinvest that money into these prisons to make sure that when they get out, they stay out. Think about how much money we're actually going to make, how much of an investment this is. People are going to have better jobs. People are going to be paying taxes. People are going to be able to support their families and ultimately make their communities better and more safe. So for those reasons, I urge a favorable report on House Bill 416 and happy to answer any questions. I believe that we also have some amendments that we provide you all with, which makes some small changes, and particularly in regards to the commission. And there's some other things that you can look over the amendment to see what we do there. But I think there's a couple tweaks we need to make here, but I would love to talk to you all offline about later.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We have a policy. I can't spend more than $250 before I go to B&T, but I suppose that since it came out of Judd, they probably got prior approval. We'll double check on that because I like this bill a lot. And then for the amendments that you have, are we in receipt? Okay, so we'll tack them on, but then it's got to go back.
Right, yeah. And I think some of these, I think we're gonna have to change. I'm looking at it now that one of the things that was in the amendment, we already spoke to approach that we couldn't do, so I got to take that back out. I think it was miscommunication. So we'll get that over to you all before the end of the day tomorrow, or hopefully today.
Got it. Excellent. Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with the chair. I like this bill a lot. I have my own bill to try to deal with reentry issues relating to prisoners. And I note that in the fiscal note, the analysis indicates that there is existing the existing program called Inmate Training and Job Pilot Program, which only applies for the period just prior to release. Does your bill piggyback on that so that the Pell Grants only would be available in the period just prior to release, or would your bill
No.
cover the range during the
Yeah.
time the inmate's in jail?
Yeah, so my bill will cover the range. So my goal, and prison reform is a big passion project for me. I've had opportunity to go actually visit some of our facilities here as a member of the Black Caucus. And what I've seen and learned is that we do a lot of work around the reentry process right before someone leaves, and we don't do enough around when they enter. And what I liken it to is when you go to college, you don't choose your major 3 months before you leave. You choose your major when you first get there, and you put together a plan so that when you leave, you're on the track to have a good job and have a great path forward. I think the issue we have now is we wait too close to the end for the reentry process to start. I'm a strong believer in that reentry should begin the minute they enter the facility. We should be thinking about what's life going to be like for that person when they leave, the minute they enter, because that's how we're really going to approach lowering our recidivism rates and ensuring that people who've made mistakes don't make them again, and they actually can go back to society and be an asset to society.
And then I am assuming that while the prisoner's in jail, that the prisoner gets this educational component through video screens, as opposed to having someone physically come to the prison to teach them, or having them physically go to a school.
It could be it can come in different forms. I know Gouchard has a program where they actually come to the prisons. I know Georgetown University does it as well, but also that we currently have in our prisons, they have I guess tablets now where they can do some learning. And I also think it's an opportunity later on. I'm working on legislation for in the future around how we can get some more better mental and behavioral health programming to where they can use the tablets to talk to people to help them, work through those things that are going inside their head. So there's definitely opportunity for technology to work with these individuals, but also I think there's still capacity for in-person learning opportunities, which we already have.
Okay, and then finally, maybe I'm wrong, but I remember there being a man named Walter Ampry, who wasn't he the school commissioner of Baltimore City?
He was superintendent, my
Superintendent.
uncle and my godfather. Miss him
Yeah.
dearly.
How long? It was a while ago.
I think he passed away my first year of law school, so that was 2014.
Gosh, okay, well, that shows my age. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think this bill is all right. No, I'm joking. No, it's a good bill, man. I was gonna ask, because I just don't know the answer to this. Are inmates eligible for our scholarships as well as the other grants, like the Guarantee Access Grant, these other grants that are available to other
You know
students?
what? I haven't even, I don't, my understanding is that they're not eligible for our scholarships, but I could be wrong.
And I also wonder if I mean, we have Promise Scholarship too, right?
Mhm.
So I wonder if that's available to them as well for free tuition for community college, right? Which I helped start it in Prince George's County. So I mean, that sounds something that we should look into as well, because I do like this sort of tracking, but I want to make sure that they are eligible to be able to have access to those resources too.
Yeah, every dollar matters. And like I said, I think this is some of the best way we can invest money in our state. The return on investment is super high. So why not make it happen?
Big time. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Senator Washington, we'll find out the answer to the question and get back to you.
Yes,
And
that's
we'll get back to you as well, Delegate. And this dovetails nicely with a lot of the bipartisan work we did a couple of years ago with enhancing access to diminution credits for seeking higher education. So thank you very much for the bill. We'll get in touch with B&T right away to see if we can get the money. And then if you give us the stuff, we'll move. We'll move on as soon as.
We'll work on it now. And thank you all again. Pleasure being in front of you all today.
Pleasure. Also, yeah, actually, you know what? Senator West just realized you all both went to the same law school. Penn grad, there you go. Boom. Quaker education right there. All right. All right. With that, that'll conclude the hearing for House Bill 416. We'll now move on to Delegate Jones, if she's still here. I think I saw her. There you go. Delegate Jones, you're here for House Bill 519. Welcome.
Thank you so very much. Hello, distinguished members, JPR. and friends, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Waldstreicher, and members of the Judicial Proceedings Committee. I, for the record, Delegate Dana Jones, District 30A, Annapolis. Thanks so much for being here in the district, in Anne Arundel County. I'm here to talk to you today about HB 519, which would help create safer and more consistent transit policies. 19 other states already do this. And let me also say that I'm so appreciative for Josh Feldmark from Bike Maryland, as well as John Cornyn from Bicycle Advocates of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County for working with me so diligently on this bill. I could not have done this without them. This bill passed the House 135-2 and unanimously through ENT. Currently, Maryland law forbids bicycles on sidewalks as the default statewide. However, localities can and have overridden this law for safety and other reasons. Unfortunately, this has inadvertently created inconsistency throughout Maryland for cyclists. In many areas of our state, roads will switch between state, county, city, state, county, city. It happens all the time here in Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. You truly do switch back and forth between jurisdiction over and over again. If this law was consistent throughout the state, not only would those commuting by bike be safer, but it would also help avoid confusion on which laws to follow when traveling across jurisdictions. All of this, of course, is compounded by the safety issues for bicyclists sharing our major roads with vehicles. This bill would amend state law to say that unless disallowed by local ordinance, a person may ride a bicycle, play vehicle, or unicycle in the code, on a sidewalk or a sidewalk area, with a caveat that riders shall proceed in a safe manner, yielding always to pedestrians. As many of you know, localities throughout the state have already enacted similar local bills, including Montgomery County, Howard County, Anne Arundel County, and the capital city here in Annapolis. Implementing this more consistent policy around bicycle usage will add to safety for bikers, help reduce traffic violence to cyclists, create safe routes to school for our children, and address transportation disparities. It can help to ensure that Marylanders have access to safer, more sustainable, and affordable transportation methods. And as we all know, with the Vision Zero implementation, this is something that is critical to so many of our districts. I wanted to just point out that, again, that 19 other states allow this. Traffic deaths and serious injuries from traffic incidents have often been seen as an inevitable result of transportation systems in the United States. However, this perspective places a heavy toll on the sustainability of our communities. The significant loss of life, serious injuries, it affects our communities in a number of ways, including personal, economic costs, emotional trauma to the victims and their families, and a significant burden on taxpayers due to the emergency responses and long-term healthcare costs. So I really see this as something that's so critical for our children, for marginalized communities, for transportation issues, and as always, keeping Vision Zero in mind as we move forward in safety. So I thank you so very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Delegate. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Actually, Senator Sidner has a question.
And thank you. Just a quick question on page 2, line 7. Says unless prohibit. You said the default is that it's prohibited.
I'm so
Right.
sorry, Senator.
The default is that it's we generally think that if you ride a bike on a sidewalk, it's prohibited.
It is the statewide law that it would be prohibited unless a locality supersedes that.
So I guess I'm curious, because I mean, generally speaking, this is what people do. This is what children do.
Right.
You don't want your children riding their bikes in the street, so ride it on the sidewalk.
I agree, Senator.
So the thing that I'm wondering is why not just preempt and just have it be the default instead of deferring to local governments to.
Well, this bill would make it the default.
So are we preempting local governments from even, because it says unless prohibited, which means.
Right. So local government or municipalities could say, you know what, we don't want that here. If they, let's say a small town somewhere would say, we don't want that here, then they could opt out. So we're just reversing
Do we want
the
them to
entire
opt out?
situation.
I guess that's my question. Do we want them to opt out? That's what I'm saying. So why give them that option to opt out? I mean, children are
working
safer
with-
being on the sidewalk than in the street. Is that the case? Some of them
There
want
are
to opt
some,
out?
I would imagine, and I think that in working with partners, this yielded, pun intended, to those that might have serious problems with it. However, everyone has received this bill in true honesty with relief because of the amount of vehicular
Makes sense.
homicides that have occurred. In fact, I have to share with you in Environment and Transportation, Delegate Jay Jacobs hit his light and spoke to the fact that as a child, he was riding his bike and had a local police officer stop, take his bike and not give it back for the fact that he was riding his
On the
bike
sidewalk.
as a child on a sidewalk. And he spoke to the fact that he was still very upset by it. And there was talk of an amendment calling this the Jay Jacobs law, but alas, here we are as just HB 519.
All right. I mean, I certainly would say I would not mind if it was just the law, but if that's how you like it.
Well,
then, I mean,
well,
that's
thank
fine.
you. And it is now the work product of your committee. So I hear you. Thank you so much.
For all transparency, Jay Jacobs thinks he is a child and that bike was his gull wing. that
Well,
he
I'm
was
happy.
riding,
Yes,
but-
I'm happy to report that it is rumored that he received a bicycle at committee dinner.
Okay, well, that's good. This does include unicycles, right?
Yes, sir. And I know that as an avid unicyclist.
Well, actually, isn't that true? Yes.
There we have it.
All right, if we pass this bill, we're gonna send Delegate Jacobs a little mini bike.
I
All
can
right.
actually juggle and ride the unicycle at the same time.
I believe
Senator
that,
Foley.
sir.
Just got a little spicy for tomorrow. Hey, I just wanted to say, Delegate, I like your bill. I like the way of flipping the wording to make it, put it on the onus of them. I've been working for a long time. I know a lot of bicycle advocates don't like me because I don't like to keep adding in more and more fees to widen roads and do all these other things when there's significant costs associated with it and there's no highway user fee process in place to supplement those widths added to the roads. So I'm glad to see this come forward. It is safer to be off the road. I think anybody will tell you that. Obviously, you can't do your bicycle races and things of that nature. And
Yeah.
so, but to Senator Sidnor's concern, I know there are some very historic districts in the communities that are probably why you're going to want to leave this the way it is, because they don't want some of that in those districts. And, you know, that's for them to decide and act. But I appreciate you bringing the bill forward.
Thank you so much, Senator. I appreciate that. Indeed.
All right, thank you very much, Delegate Jones. Seeing no further questions from the committee. Excellent. Thank you very much. That'll conclude the hearing for House Bill. Excuse me, 519. Excuse me. All right, we'll now move on to Petra is here. Yes, please come on up.
Hello, and thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and esteemed members of the Judicial Proceedings Committee. This is going to be very quick. My name is Petra Smeltzer, and I am Chief of Staff to Delegate Foley, who's asked me to serve as her proxy this afternoon. I'm here to present HB 1002, Commercial Vehicles Police Initiated Towing Alterations. And this is a bill that amends legislation that was passed by the General Assembly in 2022, but left some issues unresolved. And the issues related to developing a rate setting, a dispute resolution process for towing charges generated by police initiated tows. This bill represents a compromise among the affected parties, the towing companies and the truckers, and it reflects many months of negotiations on issues left unresolved by last year's bill. Because the negotiation process was successful, this bill passed unanimously out of the House chamber. In addition, I believe this, I know this committee heard a the cross-filed version, SB 927, not too long ago, and it mirrors HB 1002. And SB 927 also passed the Senate floor on March 28th. So this is something that is not unfamiliar to this committee, but I think that, due to some process requirements, we have to come in and present this bill before you once again. Since you've already heard this bill, I'm not going to go through what this bill does. You've already passed it favorably, and the Senate passed it on the Senate floor. So.
Excellent. This will be on a consent calendar later on. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. So with that, that'll conclude the hearing for House Bill 1002. We'll now move on to Delegate Miller with House Bill 1207. Welcome.
Be nice. It's my first time. This is my first time over here. Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. Good afternoon, Chairman Smith and the esteemed members of the Judicial Proceedings Committee. I am Delegate April Miller, and I am here today to request your favorable report of House Bill 1207. This bill passed unanimously through the ENT committee as well as on the House floor. Many of you may look at me and think, she doesn't exactly look like a motorcycle maven. Why is she bringing this bill forward? And sadly, you are correct. I am not a motorcycle maven, but what I am is a mom. So when I was presented with a struggle that one of our Frederick County moms is going through, I had to act. Some of you may understand how difficult co-parenting after a divorce can be. One afternoon, this mom received a phone call that her ex-husband had taken off on his motorcycle down the highway with their 4-year-old on the back. She panics, and her family reaches out to law enforcement for help. And they are told there is nothing they can do. It is perfectly legal in the state of Maryland for a young child to be driven on the back of this father's bike at, let's just say 70 miles an hour. When I heard about this, I thought of all the things that I had to do when my own 3 babies were growing up in Maryland to secure them legally and safely in their car seats. We went through 3 or 4 different car seats as they grew. We had rear facing until 20 pounds and 1 year of age, and then 8 and 80-pound restrictions, 5-point harnesses and car anchors, and even some of those are now outdated and replaced with stronger laws. So that this 4-year-old is carefully taken out of the secure seat by his mom and then handed over to his dad, and his dad just pops him on the rear seat of the bike, puts a helmet on him, and drives down those same Maryland roads that the mom just drove in on. And this does not seem right. So I started researching what other states do. I considered age restrictions. However, as my motorcycle friends pointed out, this may not have the intended effect. As we know, children grow at different rates, and it was suggested that it is more important from a safety standpoint that they be able to reach the rear foot pegs. Motorcycles lack the stability of a car or a truck, and they don't have the same protection. There are currently only a few states with age restriction, but most are more along the lines of this bill, including California. Here are some Maryland fast facts. Motorcycle riders 21 to 49 are overrepresented in crashes, and 9 out of 10 involve male riders, and 3/4 of the passengers that are involved and injured are female. While fatality numbers have decreased, the number of crashes is high. In an accident, a small child could suffer catastrophic injuries, including traumatic brain and spinal cord injuries, as well as severe organ damage, and that's even if they have a helmet on. Our motorcycle laws are not protecting our youngest children, all while Maryland car seat laws are being constantly updated, as they should, as new safety and information, as well as car seat technology improves. I grew up in Maryland, and I hated wearing my seatbelt. There were reasons that they were put in cars. And in Rockville in the 1950s, my grandparents were driving with their infant son being held on my grandmother's lap in the front seat, as that what was done then. And tragically, they were involved in a crash, and my baby uncle was thrown to the floor, and he did not survive. And my family was devastated. This would not have legally happened in Rockville today because of the motor vehicle and car seat laws that evolved to protect children. The laws need to evolve in motorcycle safety as well, before another family must live with the soul-crushing loss of a child. Please help protect Maryland children with your support and a favorable report on House Bill 1207. Thank you for your time.
All right, looks like you've got a lot of questions for your inaugural voyage here in JPR.
Yeah,
Everyone's
lots
got-
of questions.
Yeah, lots
Yeah,
of
yeah, lots of
questions.
stuff.
I'm ready.
No, a little bit of levity for a serious bill. Thank you very much.
Yes, of
All
course.
right, seriously though, we'll start off with Senator McKay and then we'll go on to Senator Folden. Do you have a question?
So, my question is, have you reached out to ABATE at all?
Of course, they are not contesting it all. They were very supportive in talking to me and as I developed the bill. Yes, absolutely, I did.
Thank you.
First call.
Further questions from the committee? All right, thank you very much, Delegate Miller.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Thanks. Have a good one. All right, that'll conclude the hearing for House Bill 1207. I'll hear from Delegate Stein with House Bill 1173. Delegate Stein, welcome.
Mr. Chairman and Senators, great to be here. This bill deals with agreements between RV dealers and manufacturers. Currently, agreements between RV dealers and manufacturers are governed by the same state law that governs auto dealers and auto manufacturers. But in many respects, the RV industry is different from the car industry. RV retailers are not franchises of a specific manufacturer, while an auto dealership only sells vehicles from one manufacturer. An RV dealership sells RVs from multiple manufacturers. So this bill would establish a new regulatory framework that would apply to RV manufacturers, distributors, and dealers. It would also establish new procedures and requirements that govern written dealer agreements, warranties, and other matters. And the bill is based on a nationally recognized RV-specific model law that the National RV Manufacturers and National RV Dealers Associations agreed upon last year. So it's nice, both segments of the industry, the manufacturers and the dealers, are in accordance that this is a framework that should be adopted. And in fact, similar similar laws to this one have been enacted in 18 other states, including Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Virginia. I do have a set of technical amendments, don't change the substance, we just correct some drafting nuances. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I urge a favorable vote.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Are we in receipt of the amendments? We are. Okay, great. Questions from the committee? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Elliot.
very
Thanks.
much.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Excellent. And with that, that'll conclude the hearing for House Bill 1173. We'll now move on to House Bill 820, which is a Montgomery County delegation bill. I don't see any. Are you going to do it? Okay, excellent. Senator Kelly will present House Bill 820.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Is this the last bill? Excellent. So thank you for being patient through the most exciting day I've ever had in JPR. So this is House Bill 820. It's a Montgomery County delegation bill. You have a delegation letter in your file. It is not a speed camera bill because the whole bill was struck. And it turns into basically what is a little bit more than a study bill. It's going to have the MTA place 4 devices along the intercounty connector, the ICC Route 200 that tells you how fast you're going. And then it's going to collect data, and there's going to be a report December 31st that brings us that data back. So that's what the Montgomery County delegation was able to reach a compromise on, and you have a delegation letter in your file. So with that, I would urge a favorable report.
Yeah, there you go. That's good. There you go. All right. Thank you very much, Senator. With that, that'll conclude the hearing for House Bill 820 and the hearings for the day. We're going to just reboot the system and we're going to come back and vote in 5 minutes. Is that enough time for everyone? Oh, we'll do 10 minutes? But that really means 10 minutes though. All right.